Hello, everybody. For my professional development activity, I chose the National Collaborating Center for Detriments of Health webinar. And the title of the webinar was Gender Identity, Sexual Diversity, and Health Equity in Public Health. And I chose this activity because gender identity and sexual diversity are key equity issues. And I wanted to, better understand how public health and providers can move beyond symbolic inclusion and kind of move towards meaningful structural change. Because I want to be a good provider. But the session also centered lived experience alongside public health practice, so it made it relevant and practical. And so for me, that's kind of why I decided to do this activity. I do recommend this activity, or this professional development activity, I should say, but I would really only recommend it for, actually really anyone can watch it, but especially people that are working in public health, healthcare, education, community service, mental health fields, especially if you're working with gender and gender diverse folks, queer folks, just all the above, because it offers some strategies that can be applied immediately and encourages reflection on your personal and institutional responsibility. And so I feel like that is important when you are a provider, like I said. A couple things that I've learned from that is that there are inequities that are affecting two-spirited LGBTQIA plus folks and their communities. But I found it interesting because the harm is not necessarily caused by the identity of itself, but the harm comes more from that structural oppression. So like colonization, racism, homophobia, transphobia. Those systems are what create the barriers to the care for these folks and their poor health outcomes. And again, that is not necessarily centered to their queerness or their gender diversity. And so that was quite interesting. And then the other thing, still on the two-spirit identity topic, I'm not part of that of either community. I am not Indigenous, and I am not, I align with my own gender, right? And so I was fairly certain, even though I'm not part of this community, that using the term two-spirit was for Indigenous populations, but I always saw online, white people or non-Indigenous people coining the term, using the term, appropriating that term. So I wasn't sure. I was like, is this is this not? And so they really did a great job going over and reinforcing that the two-spirit identity is an Indigenous specific identity. And so that's rooted in their culture and their community. And using it outside of that context is not really appropriate. And so I really appreciate that clarification, because it was hard to find online. And again, I really only saw it in passing. So it was nice that this webinar went a little bit more in depth. And then the third thing I learned is that there are more nuanced, harm-reducing approaches to using pronoun use and inclusive language in your practice. So like, instead of requiring disclosing somebody's pronoun, the emphasis really emphasize invitation over obligation for sharing your pronouns, and then modeling inclusive language in your practice, asking open-ended questions. So like, are there any words you prefer me not to use in your care? And so that approach kind of respects the autonomy and also just improves care for everyone. Next steps to deepen my learning. I want to continue finding similar webinars like this. In our sexuality, notebook, I had some really great resources that I would love to go back and actually participate in as far as professional development. So, would love to explore that, reinforce and practice accountability, staying open to feedback. Those are some next steps I feel like I can take and anyone can take. And then I give myself permission to feel uncomfortable and not have all the answers. So I approach this activity with openness and not perfection.